Hello and welcome to another live. This week we're joined by a very, very special guest. I feel like I say this every single time, but this time we actually are joined by an incredibly special guest, a good friend of Ultra X. So I'm super, super excited to have her on. In fact, she's just requested. I'm not going to introduce her. I'm going to let her do all the talking on that one. Just joining now. Hello!
Hello.
Oh, yeah. Mine's really pulled back.
You in the office?
I'm in the office. Got it to myself. It's lovely and quiet.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Very well, very well. We should explain before we go any further that your fridge might arrive.
Yes. Although my other housemate might potentially be able to look after it when they arrive. So
Great. Fingers crossed. It's cutting out half my head. Well, in case you have to take an interlude, that is why. Um, I've got loads of questions for you, which I was going to send over beforehand, but I thought element of surprise was far better. So we'll get stuck in straight away. But first things first, tell us a bit about you. Who are you and how do you know Ultra X?
so I'm Marina Ranger. And I know Ultra X because I did the Ultra X Jordan, which was called the Wadi Rum Ultra 3 years ago. And then I did Ultra X Jordan the year after. So I've been in the Ultra X community right from the beginning. And I did Mexico last year. Was meant to be doing the Azores this year, but obviously that unfortunately got cancelled. And I'll be in the Peak District next weekend, but only to do the 50k because I originally said I was going to be volunteering. But then, because I haven't raced at all this year, I messaged Jamie and I said, I really am dying to race. So he's do the 50k. So I'm going to volunteer day one and then race on, or just run, not race, on Sunday.
Great, well, we're very excited to have you. And for those of you that don't know, we have our first race next weekend, Ultra X England in the Peak District. It is a 1-2-5 event. The first day is 75k and the second day is 50k. And for the first time ever, we are doing an option to just race the second day. And I say just race the second day, it's still 50 kilometers, it's still a very long way, but super exciting. And we've got lots of new ultra runners racing as well, which is very, very exciting. So, we've talked a little bit about your Ultra X resume as such. Tell us a bit about what other races you've done. You're obviously a very keen triathlete as well.
Yeah, well, I only really got into triathlons 3 years ago, but I started ultra running when I was 22. So I've been doing that for, well, I'm 30 next month. So pretty much 8 years now. And I started, my first ultra marathon was in the Kalahari Desert. I was the youngest girl to have ever, or youngest person to have ever completed it at the time. And it's basically very similar to Marathon des Sables because it's self-sufficient. It's 7 days. And I kind of just literally got the bug immediately after that race, and wanted to do loads more ultra marathons. So then that then led to doing the same one again the following year, but doing it a lot better now that I had a bit of experience. And then I got into mountain racing. So I did Transvolcania, 100k in the lakes, or 115 rather. I've done one on the Amalfi Coast. Lots of kind of random and wonderful races all around the world, really. And then I did Marathon des Sables. I also did a self-organized challenge to run 500k in 5 days across Holland a few months after Marathon des Sables, which was a big ask after such a big year already, and it absolutely broke me. So yeah, I've just done I like to keep things interesting and do a variety of races, but I think my bread and butter really is the multi-stage ultras in hot locations, really.
Yeah, ideally. I mean, that's where we go, really, isn't it? And also to see the beautiful locations, which ultra do very, very well. So you are a fairly regular podiumer. Like, let's not be humble about this. You have hit the UltraX podium more than once. What is your secret? And this actually was a question from me, but also has popped up across Instagram as well. And I'm also going to kind of subdivide this question once we've heard the main answer.
What's my trick? Is that this?
Right.
Uh, just like planning to, the most ridiculous detail. I'm pretty OCD when it comes to organizing. So, and I'm also really meticulous with my training. So if I've got a training plan and I've got a goal set for myself, I make sure that I'm hitting those, short-term, mid-term, long-term goals, because I know that if I start on the start line, I want to have that reassurance that I've done absolutely everything I can to make sure I'm going to have the best race possible, and actually be able to enjoy myself and not think, oh God, I wish I did that training session. Or so I think it's literally a case of being consistent, and when you say you're going to do something, commit to it. And then besides training, also just making sure you've thought about as many details as possible in terms of your kit and your nutrition and your hydration, and making sure you've thought about all of the variables in the race, and anything that you can control, thinking about how you can respond to the different variables. So whether that being the terrain, if it's sand, or if it's really muddy, or if you're in the mountains versus flat, or if you're in a cold location versus a hot location. So all these different things to think about, because that affects your nutrition, it affects your hydration, it affects the way you train. So
And also race, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you touched on it very briefly, but two other bits that came up were piece of kit and piece of nutrition, or type of nutrition that you use that you think has aided in your very kind of glowing ultramarathon resume.
Stop it. Kit.
Stop it. Just set up, take it. This is what it's all about, these 30 minutes.
Oh dear. Kit, it's got to be shoes, I suppose, but I can't tell you what the right shoe is for everyone, because everyone's completely different, and shoes is such a personal piece of kit. But getting shoes right is so important, because you're spending all your time on your feet, and the second you get one blister, it can really start affecting your race. Not just how it feels, but also mentally. So, and it could also, if you've got a really painful big toe, if you've got a blister there, you'll then start running in a different way, and then that can then cause a different type of injury, like a knee problem. So yeah, I think shoes is obviously the biggest, most important piece of kit for me, and then nutrition. I really don't have one thing, because I literally, I'm a bit of a brand whore, in the sense that I'd like to try all the different gels and carb drinks and anything really, because I think the more varied it is, the less bored I get of what I'm eating. And when you're, running consistently and needing loads of fuel to keep you going, it's nice to have things to look forward to, and for that to be different, because otherwise it gets really monotonous. And yeah,
and you also get to a point, right, where you just don't really want to eat, so
yeah.
the more variety you've got, at least you can open your bag and you might fancy something in there, as opposed to not fancying anything at all. We've just had a question come in, which I'm gonna quickly touch on now, from Brad, who says, how valuable do you find S&C in your training, and what is your frequency off season and in race prep? Just going to hide the comments, guys, because they're covering Marina's face, but I'll open them back up in a sec.
Strength and conditioning, I will try and do once a week. It's the hardest session to fit in because I always prioritize other sessions. So my training is actually, I do triathlon training rather than just running training. So I started doing triathlon a few years ago, and I find it conditions my body a lot better than just running all the time. So having to do 3 disciplines plus doing strength and training is a big ask, but I do try and do once a week. But it is so important, particularly if you're really injury prone, to keep your strength work up. I know that I'm touch wood, not that injury prone, so I'm probably not as religious as I should be with my strength and conditioning, but I do know the value of it for people that might be more injury prone. And then in terms of my training season, it all really depends on when the races are. So ultra running, because the races I choose for ultra running are throughout the year, because even if I pick a summer race, it might be summer in the location that's the other side of the world. But for triathlon training, the season is definitely sort of from May to now, really. So the hard bulk of my training is done throughout the winter months.
And then just enjoying it through the summer, right? It's the glory.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Okay. I'm going to dip some of the Instagram questions now. So, these are kind of more ultra specific, but I think very, very relevant. So how to adjust to lack of sleep during these multi-stage ultras. Now, I know when I went into my first, I was like, how am I going to cope? Like, I love sleep. I sleep so much. And it was a real worry of mine, kind of more than the miles itself, is that how was I possibly going to recover? So what would be your kind of advice around, one, kind of settling your mind going into these things, and 2, getting as much sleep as possible, if that's even something you can advise around?
It's kind
Oh, hold on.
Sorry,
You're back.
someone just called me, so I had to decline. Yeah, I sleep so well in the desert, and I know that it's kind of a concern for people because you think, oh, sleeping on a mat, it's not going to be comfy, the floor's going to be hard, it's going to be cold. But your body needs sleep so much that I think you do tend to sleep a lot better than expected. I would say with Ultra X events, because you don't have to carry your sleeping bag and your sleeping mat on your back. I know there is a weight restriction, but you do have the luxury of being able to bring some of these things with you for extra comfort, which would be a luxury otherwise. And make sure you just get yourself a really good sleeping mat that you've tried before, and a pillow probably as well, because that'll make all the difference. And then also, if you're getting back early enough and you're not on your feet all day, you tend to have your feet and your legs lifted. Whenever I get back, when I'm having my recovery shake, the first thing I do when I get back after one of the stages is I get my recovery shake, lie down, put my feet up, and then let all the blood flush away from my legs. And I think that's just as valuable as getting lots of, well, probably not as valuable as getting lots of sleep, but it definitely helps. So all those things that you can do to sort of make up for any lost sleep will definitely help. But yeah, a pillow, good sleeping mat that you've tried, and recovery shake, and good compression leggings as well for recovery.
Being kind of smart about it, right? Giving it some thought, like you said before, with your preparations. Like this is if not as important to prepare for as the time you're actually spending running. This is where you're going to make, as you said, you're going to recover during your sleep, and you really need to do that, and you need to prioritize that both via sleep and nutrition. So it's just, I guess, another thing to add to the list of to-dos pre-race.
Yeah, exactly.
So this one I think is slightly more training specific. In fact, the next two. Essentials to pack for a day on the trails. I guess assuming someone is training for, let's say, a multi-stage race.
Water bottles, lots of water. Good nutrition, and bring spares as well, and again bring a variety. Some gels, some solids, whether it being an NG bar or a pre-made sandwich, and some carb drink. In terms of like safety sort of stuff, I don't really bother, but maybe I'm the wrong person to ask on that. Depends how long you're going out for, but battery packs maybe. I don't know. Relying on your phone for navigation. My watch I'll always take so I can track how far I've gone. Yeah, I kind of probably travel a bit lightly other than food and drink.
I guess also it depends, where you're going, and I know they have specified trails, but that could be Richmond Park, and you could be 2 minutes from a train station, Whereas if you're out, I don't know, on the South Downs or somewhere further afield, you might actually be quite far from any civilization. So I guess it would be important, like you said, with maybe battery pack or some more safety items. If you were going further afield, then you were less likely to come across someone should anything happen. But actually, that does bring me nicely onto the next one. Is someone said advice on confidence to train alone on the trails?
Confidence. I think maybe just to view it as a little adventure, and to have no preconceptions of what it is you're going to complete in terms of distance, because on the trails everything takes a lot longer, but it's way more fun than road running. Like you enjoy yourself way more. So so I think to think of it as a mini adventure, a little expedition, just have no time restrictions and just go out and enjoy exploring and looking at the views. And maybe, if you do need a confidence boost, and you want a set route, then research before. I mean, I've spent hours before trying to find a good route on the trails so that I know, you don't have to stop at every junction and think, oh my God, which trail should I take, left or right? So take some time to plan it before.
And I guess also with that, you can then see where you might come across a shop or a pub or, civilization or something. So then at least if you felt a niggle or you ran out of water or something, you'd know that in X number of miles you're going to get I was going to say an aid station, but probably not an aid station. Something similar.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So, okay, this is a good one. Ever fallen out of love with running? And if you have, how did you fall back in love with running?
Oh, sounds so romantic. Yeah, I mean, I definitely gone through some stages where I've completely lost my mojo. And they're usually because I don't have a goal to aim for. Actually, throughout lockdown, I managed to maintain it quite well, really, but recently it was almost when races started happening when I started losing the love of it. And I'm not quite sure why, but sometimes there's not even an explanation for it. But I suppose I just, in terms of how I react to it and how I get back in love with it, I think I just listen to the body, do what it needs. So if I do lose my mojo, it might just mean that, I need a couple of weeks not doing loads of running and maybe substituting it with a bit more cycling and swimming, and then see if that lack of running means that I want to do more of it again. So just kind of going with the flow sometimes and accepting that you can't always be so strict in your schedule, and sometimes you just have to listen to the body.
Absolutely. And I think it's also worth mentioning it's completely normal. Like, you know, both you and I absolutely love running, and we'll probably do it all day, every day if we had the option. But that doesn't mean that we don't occasionally have days where we're like, oh, I just really don't fancy
Oh,
that. Or
so
like, you know, it happens, and that's normal. That doesn't mean you're demotivated or you're, you know, anything really. As long as it's not every single day,
yeah,
then okay, and you know, just deal with it. And if you really don't feel like going, then you know, move it to the next day.
exactly.
It's the end of the world.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna pull two more from this list.
Cool.
Okay, this one's actually good, I think, off the back of what we've just been talking about. So how do you manage other commitments? Obviously, your training volume is quite high. It have high training for these types of events. It requires a lot of hours on your feet on race day, or you know, on a bike or in the water, and therefore it does take up a lot of time. And so, how do you manage that alongside kind of other, you know, social commitments, work commitments, life commitments, admin?
Um, I suppose I just try and get my priorities straight based on what's going on at that certain time. You know, if for example I've got a really serious race coming up and I know that I want to do well in it, then I will sacrifice social occasions for a training session. But if I know I've really haven't got much coming up and I'm doing training because I love training and I love keeping fit and healthy, then I'll be prepared to sacrifice a training session for going out for drinks or dinner or whatever. And then obviously I've got a full-time job as well whilst training, so it's just being prepared for early morning starts and also having to come home after work and think about training. You know, occasionally having double days. I probably at the moment, well, yeah, probably have Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday as double days, and then Monday, Friday single days, and then the weekend obviously kind of training the whole time. Yeah. To some degree. So it's just getting into a routine so that your body isn't shocked every time you wake yourself up at silly o'clock before work to get your training in. But I will say, I think, particularly because I was on furlough for 3 months, and particularly now that I've started a new job, it has been a shock to the system in terms of routine, and I've really seen a difference in my hormones. It sounds a bit weird, but it has actually affected my hormones, and I was really surprised at how much it had affected my hormones. So it really reminded me how important kind of it is to gradually ease yourself back into a different type of routine, because I used to be waking up at, well, I suppose maybe like 8 o'clock and then having breakfast and then going out training, whereas now I'm waking up and going out training immediately.
Yeah.
And I suppose my cortisone levels are a lot higher than they were before. So it's been a shock to the system, but you just kind of gradually have to let your body adapt. And now I'm back into the swing of things. So
That's not just fitness either. That's, as you said, it's a completely different lifestyle change. So that is that your stress levels have gone up, not just in the sense of physical exercise, but also with your new routine and work, which is very exciting. Okay, final question, and you got to finish with this one. Hardest race you've ever done?
Does it have to be race, or can it be
like a challenge?
Hardest thing I've ever done, hands down, is running 500k in 5 days through Holland, because makes me cringe thinking about it now. Like, it was so painful. Literally, I can't actually explain how much pain I was in, but I just still had to wake up every day and run 100k, no matter how little sleep I had had, or how much pain my feet were in. I had my trainers were cut up with scissors because they were so swollen I couldn't even fit my feet in the shoes, and I had such awful blisters. Didn't get any sleep at all. You know, having to keep my legs elevated. My legs literally like swelled up to twice the size than what they usually are, because they were obviously just, I don't know, in like shock at what I was doing to them. And yeah, I cried through a lot of that. So that was definitely the hardest thing I've had to do, and probably won't do again.
I mean, that sounds pretty tough. Well, you know, as a heads up for anyone thinking about running 5 days, you know, you think twice about that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, in 5 days, give it a go. Well, it has been an absolute delight having you, and I'm so glad that the fridge didn't arrive. I feel like we've timed
Oh,
this very well.
yeah.
And lovely to speak to you. And I will obviously put up all your tags in this video, and it will be available to watch on our IG. So have a lovely rest of the day, and I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me.